Hello, my friends. Hit that subscribe button if you like. Let's get out of the way early doors. We know what we're doing here, but that's right. I think WWE, as I wiggle around in my chair, may be about to make a huge mistake. And when I say a huge mistake, I'm exaggerating. But of course, at the end of this week's episode of Raw, it came out that from October, basically through till the end of 2024, Monday Night Raw will be 2 hours again. Now, there'll be some people watching this show right now that have never seen Raw at 2 hours, but it was once 2 hours. It was once 120 minutes, and I thought it was the best thing ever. And given the Raw is about to head to Netflix, I think this is a template that we should embrace. The reason I say this is this. It can be 2 hours, it can be 3 hours, it could be 72 hours. It is Netflix, right? They're only just sort of dipping their toe into proper live streaming and not on-demand live streaming. So I actually think it should be a 2 to 3 hour show. Now, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty here because that will get boring, but here is my point. The reason I'm so up for 2 hours is because I genuinely believe, and I think we'll probably see this throughout October to December, depending on what happens, you never know, but I'm sure Triple H wants to keep his good booking up. I honestly believe this, and I mean it. Get mad in the comments, go nuts, Attitude Era guys. I was one of you, but hey, I've searched my feelings and I've rewatched those shows a lot, and there's bad moments in them. The Raw will be better than it ever has been. I truly think that. I think 120 minutes is the perfect running time for a show, like I just do. All the best moments I've had have always come within a 2 hour window block, and I will say this. Ever since the regime change in WWE, they have smashed 3 hour Raws. Some people say that Raw is better than SmackDown now. I would tend to agree with you. And I'm genuinely impressed that they were able to figure out a way to do it. They did it by building new stars, so you have depth and you have characters and you have storylines. So when we go from one to the next, like, oh, I remember this because that happened then. And oh my gosh, I was watching this one 6 weeks ago, and now I get to see what the next step is. This is good stuff. This is what we were missing from WWE for so many years, and why so many people are happy that it's back. But that last hour, for me personally, whether I'm watching it live, whether I get up super duper early, I would say a random number. 65% of the time, I'm just like, oh man, it's really long. That's not WWE's fault. That's not Raw's fault. It's not Paul Levesque's fault. It's not The Undertaker's fault. It's not my nan's fault. She's dead, so she can't do anything. It's just life. Anything is too long for 3 hours. When it was a big talking point when the 3 hour Raws were not good, I always said there's nothing, and I mean nothing. Sexual intercourse, I don't want to do it for 3 hours. My thing is it's going to get all like red and raw. I don't want to go to the gym for 3 hours. I don't want to play football for 3 hours. I don't want to, well, you can probably want to play video games for 3 hours, but that's a little bit different, right? But you wouldn't want to sit there for 3 hours. It'd be more healthy if you went outside for a little bit. But that's the point. It's just such a long time to do anything. And even when you go to the cinema and you see something like Lord of the Rings going back in the day, I know people like how epic they feel, but every now and then you just feel it deep down in your tootsie toes. I don't want to go over 3 hours. Even if it was 2 hours and 58 minutes for some reason, that feels a little bit more palatable. And if you can take all the good stuff that WWE is doing and then be forced to fit it into a 2 hour chunk, maybe you can kind of cut off, I don't want to call it faff, but it's not faff. I think sometimes we stretch things out because we can. And that's what we should do. If you have the space, why the hell wouldn't you walk into it? You don't need to hide in the corner. But if we can kind of cut some of that off, make it pacier and quicker and leave you with those emotions to, now you obviously want stuff to breathe, but there's also a real art, there's a hoity-toity word for you, where you can hit somebody really intensely with an emotion, then move on. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this right now. You don't want to do that all the time because sometimes somebody can lose that emotion. But with the 3 hour Raw, you rarely get that because again, we can chill out, don't worry about it. Let's have a good time. So we're taking all of these stories and we're still finding a way to balance all the superstars that we do have, and I understand that's going to be a concern. How do we get them all in when we've lost 60 minutes? I think it could be great. And no, I don't think the answer is 3 to 4 minute matches again. I think Triple H is way too smart for that. I just think this could be the thing that really explodes. And if you did do it when you moved on to Netflix, of course you're going to get you've got a bigger platform. You're probably going to get a bigger audience. The Rock's going to come back. We'll probably do the big Cody Rhodes match during that era. Let's not forget that SmackDown is still on USA Network in America for however long it is. So eventually that will come across to Netflix too. So you want to build and make sure that the momentum, there's that word again, the momentum is there the whole time. And I don't see why you couldn't 1 week do 2 hours and 1 week do 3 hours, depending on the stories that you want to tell. Or it's different when it's on television because, again, I think one of the reasons it sounds like all speculative that WWE has done this is because USA was like, look, we're only done you a mini deal here. I think they paid $25 million, which is way under market just because the WWE deal with Raw USA ended in October. They're not going to Netflix until January, so there was just space there. They were going to put it on Peacock and they changed their minds. You may as well make something for it. But USA was like, we can't go past 10 in the States. We've already got a program there. So everyone said, okay, for a few months, we'll do 2 hours. hours. Now, it's all going to depend on how the ads work on Netflix. I don't really know. Obviously, it's different. There's probably going to be, well, 0 ads, depending on the subscription service that you pay for. But you have to remember that too. So if you can have a Monday Night Raw with no ads, you probably cut out 35 to 40 minutes anyway. So then it's a 2-hour 10, 2-hour 20-minute show. Why can't it be a 2-hour 20-minute show if there are no ad breaks? You don't need, if anything, if you do a 3-hour show on Raw, as I interrupt myself without ad breaks, technically it's going to feel like a 3.5-hour show because it's all going to be content. Although I guess you could also say that adverts are really boring. But I think actually changing the running length between only a couple of times, you don't want a show that's 1 hour 32, people will get confused, may actually allow you to reach out to people in the same way that sometimes you're watching a series, right? And there's 10 episodes. One episode's an hour, one's 45, sometimes it's 52 minutes. They're never dead on exactly the same. And sometimes you watch a movie and the sequel will be 2 hours and the next one is 3 hours. I think you can do that with Monday Night Raw. Maybe you don't want to be too crazy with it. So maybe throughout February, you would want to go, I don't know, 2 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours. But I just remember how great even a bad 2-hour Raw was compared to some of the bad 3-hour Raws. And I really hope that it's something that WWE tries to embrace. And in many ways, maybe this is a testing ground to see if they can get away with it. Now, listen, if it's going to cost them money because there is some advertising or some licensing thing I'm not thinking of, I hold my hands up and say, well, you probably shouldn't do it because it's called the wrestling business. And the more money that WWE earns, hopefully that can go to the wrestlers. And that's the most important thing in the world. And hopefully that makes the industry stronger. And I do like the 3-hour Raw. I have no problems with it anymore. I just prefer 2 hours. And 2 hours Raw gets me really excited because I do think there is this potential to produce, I'm talking ever, right? When did it start? 1993. I'm saying I think you can have the best ever Raws because of the way that the card is structured and the stories we've got going on and just how exciting it feels anywhere. I mean, we go back to last night's Raw. I love the Intercontinental title tournament. The fact Jey Uso won, had a stare down with Braun Breaker. I was like, oh man, this is going to be great. The Bret Hart thing is the best thing Bret Hart's done on wrestling TV in years. The Gunther and the Bill Goldberg comments, which was perfect insider baseball for me. Sami Zayn and Bret Hart felt like the people you want to hang out with, your best friends, and you want Sami Zayn to go after that championship. New Judgment Day finally getting theirs over Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest, so everybody is happy about that. The opening 8-man tag with the Wyatts taking on American Made was super duper fun. I know I was having to street fights recently. Every single one is a certified banger. And Chad Gable and his team have been beaten 3 times in a row, and you don't hear that many people complaining. Because again, you like the Wyatts. That's when people used to complain. When you would have somebody that was being underutilized, but they've been beaten by someone that no one cared about. You like the Wyatts. You care about them. Okay, so they beat Chad Gable, who we all love too, but we believe that Chad Gable will be okay. And that's because WWE has put time into restoring our faith in the product that they're not going to screw us over. Now, listen, it's not perfect. I love Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair as tag team champions. I enjoyed the match with Isla Dawn, and Alba Fire. I still think they need more story. I still think we need to prop those championship belts up. But again, that's a pat on the back for WWE. I said this on What Culture Ups and Downs for All. Please do check it out. There'll be a link somewhere on here. It's WWE doing such a good job in other places that maybe if they have lowered the bar in other areas, you notice it more. That's a couple of thumbs up. The same with the Pure Fusion Collective, although they did get away with it this week because there's an exception to the rule. You're in Calgary. Natalia comes out. Let's just call her Natalie from now on. And you have the fun aspect of it. You have the atmosphere. You have the reaction. She won and she never wins. And look, if you have that in your arsenal and you use it and you kind of take the advantageous position of being in your hometown, then up, down, left, right, everyone is going to have a good time. So it was an easy Raw to watch. There was nothing bad about this. And all the little Bron Breakker moments backstage when he was basically yelling at people. And you had the Miz and Karrion Kross. That went all for 30 seconds, but it's planting seeds. The same with the New Day. There'll be other stuff I'm not thinking about right now, which is probably bad of me. Like in that main event when Bronson Reed came out of nowhere and just crushed Braun Strowman. Super cool. Something I want to see again. Drew McIntyre's promo, awesome. Getting Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood. And Hell in a Cell is like a stipulation that's worthwhile again. I just think if you listen how I talk about it, right? This is genuine excitement. I'm not putting it on. And you can go back to my video in 2018. Sometimes it's like, oh, no, what are we going to do? And because, like I say, I don't want to repeat myself, I have seen how good when you do compact a wrestling show into 120 minutes is. You take all this great stuff you're doing right now, and, that Drew thing could have been done maybe 2-3, minutes shorter. Maybe the main event could have been 2-3 minutes shorter. Maybe there's some other things that you can sort of trim a little bit. Then all of a sudden, I think you're onto something. But I guess at the same time, the best thing about having the third hour is the tribute that we did to the hockey players and, more of that stuff is good. Like they did, but again, they did that on SmackDown as well last week, right? When they said goodbye to Fox, we worked in that 2-minute video, so you can do it in 2 hours. And some people say, Simon, how is The Rock ever going to do a promo, or the Bloodline is ever going to do a promo? We know they go long. All right, fine. That's when you untighten the sails and you add an extra half an hour onto Raw. What difference does it make? If you're watching it live, they can tell you beforehand, like you can click and it can say, or if you're watching it afterwards, it doesn't matter because you're going to wind forward to the point that you want. It is not television anymore, and that is what we should be embracing. I don't think Raw is on TV at all. I'm pretty sure Raw, I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, change the conversation, drop me a comment, and we can update this. But if Raw is going to be completely flexible across the world because it's going to Netflix everywhere, I know it's in the States, and I know it's over here in the United Kingdom, which are their 2 biggest markets, I don't see why you wouldn't take advantage of that in more ways than one, as I run the word advantageous into the ground. So it's a really exciting time. Either they do stick to 3 hours, I still think Netflix is going to be a supreme move for them. But I watched that Raw, and I was thinking to myself, man, we're heading to Bad Blood. What used to have been a random pay-per-view in October, even the first one they did in October 1997 was pretty random, and people are pumped for it because you're going to get CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre in a Hell in a Cell. And look, it's not going to be as mad as Hangman Page versus Swerve Strickland, but if you don't think those guys are watching that and going, okay, well, we need to bring a certain intensity to this, you're nuts. There's always that kind of competition. That's the healthy competition, but ultimately everyone in AEW and everyone in WWE, the wrestlers, want the other company to do well. They just do because they know it's good for the ecosystem. So that is going to rule, and there's going to be a Cody Rhodes match announced on SmackDown too, and obviously he's fighting Solo Sikoa on SmackDown to big up the USA Network, so that's going to have something too. We get all the Judgment Day matches, Rhea Ripley and Liv, and Dominic and Finn Balor, Damian and Finn Balor, which I've wanted to see for ages. And there's something else I can't even think about. It sounds like we're doing Jey Uso versus Bron Breakker for the IC title on TV. Now, it kind of makes you worry that Jey Uso is going to win the title, but at the same time, should Bron Breakker lose it now? He certainly should not. So if we do big it up and we do make sure it feels like a humongous deal, that can tie into all of this too. We're not just, excuse the French, shooting our load onto pay-per-views, premium live events. So if you want to extend a Raw, and make it like a pay-per-view, you totally can. So I called it a mistake. It's probably a little bit of exaggeration, but it goes to show that we're going to be way more flexible, same with the adult kind of content and maybe some of the stories we can tell. But as Roman Reigns said during an interview, you want to keep that culture that they have embraced because it's brought them to the promised land, which is totally true. This is exciting times, my friends, for WWE. And just because I tweeted this earlier, cheap plug to the Simon of 316, I really don't understand and when I say old guard, I'm not talking about the Kevin Nash, Logan Paul stuff. That exists in its own bubble. I will talk about that at some point. But there are some old guard figures, and they're more than allowed their opinion. I respect them. But they come up with these really weird phrases. And I mentioned it because it was in reference to people on Raw, specifically Sami Zayn, which I found strange. Well, Sami Zayn doesn't look like a wrestler, and he's not a star. And I'm like, I'm sorry, WWE is doing incredible ratings. They're making more money than ever. They're about to move to Netflix. They're just such a successful wrestling company. And Sami Zayn is a part of that. And Sami Zayn, for the last few years, has been pushed as a main event talent. Therefore, he must be a star because he's bringing people in. I hear the pops. I see that he sells lots of merchandise. I'm sorry, you don't think he looks like a wrestler, and that's perfectly fine because that's your taste. But the numbers and the statistics tell us that he certainly is, and I want this. I love muscles, obviously. Grillermine.com. /Simon. Use code Simon, get 10% off or 30% off pre-workout at the moment in the gummy flavor. But I do love it. But again, Sami Zayn is one of my favorite wrestlers. I'm sure he goes to the gym, but he's not training for musculature. I think Kevin Owens is my favorite modern day wrestler ever. Genuinely, Bryan Danielson is the GOAT. These aren't jacked monsters, but I want jacked monsters too, and I want people like Bronson Reed, and I want people like Braun Strowman, and I find it weird when you try to marginalize wrestling. I think that's when wrestling is the worst, and we kind of saw that when Vince McMahon had this edict that you had to be 6'2" and 245 pounds. I don't want that. Now, I'm going to end this video here because I'm jet lagged. I've only just landed from Canada a few years ago, but I must make the content. That's why I'm a bit wired. I've taken a lot of coffee. But check them out too. Go to Alpha One Wrestling, watch my match, listen to my commentary, give me feedback. If you don't like it, hey man, I can take it. I'll cry at night, but that's fine. Otherwise, like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Give me a comment below. Maybe you love 3 Hour Raws. It sounds like a terrible idea. Click that on the screen. It's yet another conversation about have AEW WWE gone too far. Spoiler, the answer is no. Come follow me on social media. Again, it's grillermine.com/Simon. You can Simon get 10% off. A Go-Go Fitness, train at home with Anthony Go-Go. You're going to get in shape. Use code Simon20. Patreon.com/Simon316. And Pro Wrestling Tees, Simon Miller. Simon Miller on Cameo. Simon J. Miller on TikTok. And I'll leave it there. I still got to edit this thing, man. And again, I've fallen asleep twice today at my desk because I'm an old man. Look at my weird tan. It's coming off as well. But I had a great weekend. And that's because of lovely people like you watching this stuff. I appreciate you. And I'll see you soon.